Hello, everybody. My name is Wilbur, and welcome to episode 8 of the Geek'd Out Podcast, a podcast about video games. And as you can tell from this week's title, we are talking about the secret of mana, and I have probably the most fun dude to do it with. He is known as the juiciest booty on Twitch. It's Mr. Raw Genesis. How you going today, friend?
Oh, that's me. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am very unjuicy.
That's a lie. I've seen your stream. Don't lie to me.
You've seen the top half of my stream.
I don't know. It's pretty juicy. I think most people would agree.
I need to do like the walking to the back of the room and writing down the sub names, and maybe I'll start doing that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you need to turn your back to the camera and give it like a blue steel.
Yes, that's what I've been missing. Oh my god.
Exactly.
So guys, we are talking about the secret of mana this week, but we are going to start the episode the way we mostly always kind of do, and talk about what games we've been playing. So Raw, what games have you been playing this week?
Oh, I've been playing way too many games. I'm in the middle of like 6 games. It's ridiculous. So I've been playing Yakuza Kiwami, which is the remake of Yakuza 1, and I love it. The Yakuza games are fantastic. I played Yakuza 0 last year, and now Kiwami, and I'm just going to keep playing through them. They're unbelievable, and I love them. If you haven't played a Yakuza game, you trust me, you're missing out.
I've heard that they're just like stupid, silly fun, but like actually really well made games as well.
Oh yeah, it's like, for me when I play it, it's 75% side quests and little like just fun little side missions and people you bump into in the street that turn into like these ridiculous little side stories and stuff. And then 25% playing the actual main storyline. Like, but their side quests are so ridiculous. They're just out of control. In Yakuza 0, you bump into a guy who's just like this almost naked dude. He's just wearing underwear, and he's totally shaved head and eyebrows and everything, and he's like covered in lube, and he's like super ultra horny all the time. and you bump into him like 6 or 7 times, and it's just gets more and more ridiculous every time.
It reminds me of that episode of It's Always Sunny where Frank covers himself in like sanitizer and shaves all his hair so he doesn't get germs.
Yeah, just like that, except a lot skinnier. This guy's a lot skinnier. But yeah, it's just like the most ridiculous characters you could think of, and you bump into them. It's pretty out of control. I absolutely love it. I was streaming it last night, Yakuza Kiwami, and almost the entire second half of my stream ended up just being me in a those little kind of toy cars that you race around a little like made up track. They're called like the pocket car races.
Yeah,
or whatever.
kind of. Yep.
Pretty much the entire second half of my stream was just in Yakuza playing the pocket car racing games and just making the best possible car and buying parts. And I ended up spending like all of the money I'd made in the entire game buying car parts for my little toy car in the game.
Nice. That's content.
Oh, it's good. I don't know why people watch my stream, to be honest.
Oh, I definitely know why people watch your stream. So you've been playing anything else? You said you played like 1,000 games.
I've been playing a little bit of Wargroove, which is a fantastic little indie game. That's like it's a turn-based kind of strategy game, kind of in the same vein as like a Final Fantasy Tactics style game, but it just came out recently. The art style on it is amazing. It has like a limited amount of voice acting, but even that is really good. And I loved the like the Final Fantasy Tactics games when I was growing up. So I never got super into the original Final Fantasy games, but I was all about the tactics games. And this is like one of the best modern style of kind of tactics games I've played in a long time. It's really good.
Yeah, so a few episodes ago, we were talking to Kuro about Advance Wars, and he brought up that Wargroove is probably the best modern version of Advance Wars as well, and he really likes Wargroove as well. Have you played Advance Wars, or is that something you missed?
I think I played a little bit of one of them. Was on like the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had it. I think I had one on there, and I played a little bit of it, but I didn't play heaps of it.
Yeah.
Because this was at a time when I would bring my Nintendo DS to work with me to work, and then I'd go off to the bathroom for like 15 minutes and play like 15 minutes of games.
Is this pre-smartphone?
This was like beginnings of smartphone.
Yeah.
You know, so smartphones weren't so great back then.
No,
but I had my little DS in my pocket.
Dude, how good was the Nintendo DS? I know, like, you know, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance was good, but the DS, like, just changed the world, man. It was so good.
It really did. Like, it's one of those technology kind of ideas that has kind of lived on like generations after that, where they've made more and more stuff since then. They've made so many more like Game Boy style things since then, but all of it has taken so much inspiration from the DS.
Yeah. Oh, it's insane. I love the DS, and hopefully Nintendo can make like another proper handheld console. I don't know if they will with, you know, the Switch and everything, but fingers crossed we get another DS like handheld, because I like handheld games. I think they're just nice and easy, and the Switch, while being kind of handheld, is kind of nice and easy. It's not something you can put in your pocket and play while you're pooping at work.
Yeah, unless you've got giant cargo pants.
Oh, well, I don't have any of those. I don't know what you're talking about.
What, you don't still live in the 90s?
Mentally I do. physically I'm trying to keep up with what the kids are doing, and it's not giant cargo pants, that's for damn sure.
They're missing out with their skinny jeans. They can't fit anything in those pockets.
I think Nintendo Switch. Have you been playing any other games?
I can't go too much into this one, but I like just recently finished The Last of Us 2.
Oh,
and if I can't, it'll be like an hour of just talking about that game. So
yeah.
All I'll say is there's a big divide of people. They either really love it or they really hate it. I thought it was pretty good. I liked it.
I think people hate it for the dumbest reason though. Like I'm sure there's people out there that might just not like the game because they just don't like the game, and that's fair enough. But I feel like a lot of people don't like the game because of the, I guess, certain story beats and I guess certain characters you play as, which is kind of dumb because you're like, it's a game and a story they've made and a story they've told, and it's like I guess the only reason I can think of is because people like Joel and Ellie so much from, you know, first game, that anything different from the first game is like, this isn't good because this isn't like the first game. But like the second game, while it wasn't super mind-blowing to me, I really, really, really enjoyed that story. Like it was definitely a story that needed to be told in that world with those characters. Yeah,
totally. I agree.
But oh my god, like that when that first like big story moment happens and like really takes you by surprise, like I was literally shocked.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't want to like spoil it for anybody, but no. Same. I was also pretty shocked. That was a pretty hard hitting moment.
I think I had a little tear. Cried. No. Anyway. So if you want to watch Raw go play all these magnificent games, definitely go follow him on Twitch. All his details will be in the description somewhere below. I'll definitely put it there. Definitely. So no surprises this week. I have been playing a little bit of Sea of Thieves. This is unofficial Sea of Thieves podcast.
I've really been looking forward to being a part of the official Sea of Thieves podcast.
Every week. So,
oh yeah.
Have you ever played Sea of Thieves?
I have not played it at all.
Are you interested in it?
Not
or
one single
not really?
time. Not particularly. Like I remember when it first came out, and this didn't factor into my decision to not play it or anything. But I do remember when it first came out, heaps of people jumped onto it. They played it heaps for like a few weeks, and then they were like, "Oh, there's not very much content," and then they left and went on to other things. And I know since then there's been like so much stuff added onto that game since release. But I remember that being the first kind of way a lot of people played that game and then moved on to other stuff, and they kind of never went back to it. But for me, I don't know, I was just never super that interested in playing it because it seems like a game. Back then, it seemed like a game there wasn't much into it, and then now it seems like a game where you could play it forever, and those are like the two ends of the spectrum that I kind of don't want to play games because I like jumping from game to game a lot.
Yeah, but
I want that game to have a lot of substance when I'm playing it. And in the beginning, it was at one end of the spectrum, and now it seems like a game that if you play it, you're just going to play this forever. It's never-ending content till the end of time. Like, I don't know. I got too many other games to play. I don't have time to play.
I remember when it came out, and I was the same. Like when it first came out, and people were like, "Well, there's not really anything to do." So I was like, "Well, I'm not going to play that game." And then I think I was just streaming one night, and someone's like, "Hey, do you play Sea of Thieves?" I'm like, "Why would I play Sea of Thieves? Like, it's got nothing to do." And like, "Oh no, they've like added heaps of stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, fine, I'll check it out." And that was it. That was the end of my life. I'm playing for like 2.5 years or whatever now.
Yeah. And I just never bought it. I just never paid the money to buy it. So I was like, I never bothered.
Hey, it's on Game Pass.
I don't have Game Pass.
Oh my god, this guy. So season one, Sea of Thieves has started doing like seasons now. And they just dropped season 1 on yesterday, Friday. And I was kind of very excited about it. I was like, ooh, the new possibilities. And the problem Sea of Thieves has had, and I know 2020 was a rough year for developers, I understand that, but I feel like a lot of the updates, if not all the big updates they do, to cater to newer players, like players who are just starting or might have played like a little bit and are coming back and stuff. Whereas like people like myself, who play almost every week and have done every single thing, they don't really add stuff for us. So with this season, they added a new merchant voyage, which is it's a good voyage for people who want to do merchant stuff, but I don't need to do merchant stuff because I'm max level in everything. So that doesn't really appeal to me. So it's like, what is Rare doing for the player who has done everything? And unfortunately, they have done nothing. So the season will last for 3 months. So hopefully season 2, like if season 2 comes out and it's just more of the same stuff they've been doing like most of 2020, I would probably start looking for like a new main game to stream.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, like, you said that they've made all these changes for new players, and that's like for the next 3 months.
Yep.
For the next 3 months, you're gonna probably keep playing this game anyway, though, right?
Yeah, I will keep playing because I love this game so much, and there's not an experience like this out there with any other game that I can find. If I could find it, I would probably go and play that game. But it's the most unique experience I've ever had playing video games. But they during the season, I guess over the 3 months, they're going to be doing like events where you can like grind a certain thing, and you might get like some cool cosmetics because it's basically a cosmetic based game. So the first event I think starts on like the 4th, and it's like a really cool weapon set. So I'm like, I kind of like the weapon set, so I'm going to do that. So we'll see. Like, but it's just like I was talking about this with my friends last night, and it's kind of like they just keep reusing the same, I guess, game mechanics and just sort of changing it a little bit. So it's like trying to pretend that it's new, but it's just using something they've already used and putting it somewhere else. And I guess that's why I'm kind of getting like a little burnt out and like a little bored. But as long as there's like PvP and I can go like murder some other pirates, I will be happy. But sometimes that's far in between.
Yeah. That being said, like, how long have you been playing Sea of Thieves for now?
I think since like Q1 2019.
I mean, like, you got to think about, like, you've been playing it for that long. That's a long shelf life for a game.
Oh, 100%. If a game like Destiny or The Division or like any other like games of service game like pulled that, like this kind of stuff, I would stop playing. And I have. Like, I usually stop playing these kind of games like after I finish like the main story, like in The Division 2. While I absolutely love The Division, once I finish a story or something like that, I usually jump off pretty hard because I don't mind grinding for stuff, but it becomes a little bit tedious and you're like, I don't really want to do it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of grinding in games.
But Sea of Thieves has like the PvP element, which I guess is really the only thing that really excites me anymore. So if I can find some like, PvP to do, I will go directly to that and do it. And then I sync them, and then I'm like, well, now what do? Got to look for the next ship, and then people start getting really toxic because you sunk them in a pirate game. like last night we rolled up on this like 2-person sloop, and we put some holes in them, and 2 of us went over, and then we killed them, and then we sunk them. And while we were killing them, they're like, "Oh my god, why are you doing this to us? Why do you have to be like this? You guys are dicks." And I'm like, because it's a pirate game. Like, I guess people they get really like upset that you sink them. It's like, dude, it's a pirate game. Please.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see where they might be coming from if they wanted to play it, but they're not into it for the PvP, and they just like I'm assuming there's some kind of non-PvP aspect to the game.
Oh, it's like it's a lot of PvE stuff as well. And yeah, I understand that too. But you kind of know what you're getting into when you play Sea of Thieves.
The only thing I can liken it to is, because I played a hell of a lot of it, is GTA Online. Where, yes. And then you look at the GTA Online Reddit communities and stuff like that, and everybody just hates the people who are flying around shooting at random people while they're trying to get their jobs done. You're going out, you're trying to do work for your business, and you're trying to move your cargo from like your factories out to sell all your stolen cargo so you can make a shitload of money and stuff like that. And then somebody comes along and like just blows up your truck, and you're like, well, I just worked 2.5 hours to get that cargo, and now it's all gone and I'm making zero money. And they blew me up and they achieved nothing. They don't get any money either. All they got to do was shoot a couple of rockets at me, and now it's all over. I just wasted 2.5 hours of my time.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same with Sea of Thieves. You see a lot of people saying, I did this voyage for 2.5 hours and now they came and stole my stuff. And I understand that's rough, but for me, I like to sink people, and it fills me with pleasure.
See, at least you can steal their stuff. In GTA, they just blow you up and they get nothing.
Oh, 100%. Like if you sink someone and don't take their loot and just let it sink to the bottom of the ocean, that is absolutely toxic. Should be ashamed of yourself. Anyway, that's Sea of Thieves. Welcome to Sea of Thieves podcast. I also finished watching.
Before we go on, one thing. When does this transition into the Mandalorian podcast?
Oh, did you watch the Mandalorian? Don't get me started.
All right. Guess what? You want to know something? I haven't watched season 2 of Mandalorian yet.
Oh my god! You watched season 1 though?
Oh hell yeah!
And you liked it?
Yeah, I loved it. I was waiting for all of season 2 to come out of Mandalorian, but then it's all out now, and I watched all of season 1 with my partner, and we just haven't gotten around to getting the time to sit down and watch season 2 yet.
Oh man, my podcast must have been hard to listen to for those first 8 weeks.
There was a lot of, all right, skip forward. Oh, no, they're still talking about Mandalorian. Okay, skip forward.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's the problem. Like I'm like that with Stacy, my fiance, where if we start a show together, I'm like, cool, yeah. I love watching shows with her. But god damn, I'm like, hey, you want to watch that show? And she's like, oh, not tonight. I'm like, oh my god, I need to finish the story.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Exactly.
It's rough. But so we're gonna sunset the Mandalorian podcast, and I'm gonna start a new podcast about Cobra Kai, because
All right, sign me up.
Oh boy, I just finished. I smashed all 3 seasons, and I finished it up last weekend because it is so good. It's so good.
It's like I love that show as well. I totally agree. It is also so unbelievably corny,
But in a good way.
but it's great.
Yeah.
I love the corniness of it. Like there hasn't been a show that I've been into that's been like this kind of old school nostalgia, like corniness to it that seems to just work so well and is so just bingeable in such a long time. So I pretty much did the same thing when because I had already watched season 1 and 2, and then when season 3 came out, I just binged the whole thing in like a weekend.
Oh, it's easy to do because they find I don't know how, but they found a way to add that sort of corniness, but with some seriousness, and then some really good comedy, and it's just like the writing is good, but because it is so over the top and corny, it's almost like it's an anime sometimes.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it's so over the top.
Like it's not really spoilers, but like with Kreese, like every time he has an interaction with someone and he gets the last word and he's like holding his gi and he's just like staring up and down, I'm like, yes, this is definitely some sort of anime boss lord.
All right, have you ever seen JoJo's?
Yes.
Kreese is like Dio. He's always there. You think he's gone, and then he comes back. It was me, Kreese. Oh!
He's always in a room and he walks out. He's always been showering for some reason.
Yeah, every time. You think he's gone, and then like suddenly, he's gone for a shitload of time, and then he walks into a room, and suddenly, look, it was me. It's Kreese again.
It was always me. But so good. I love Johnny Lawrence. I think he's a fantastic character. And people are like, oh, I haven't seen Karate Kid. You don't have to watch Karate Kid. You just have to sort of know what happened at the end of Karate Kid, and basically you're all good to go, because they do a lot of flashbacks during the show, and if you are a Karate Kid fan, it's really cool just to see like what they're all doing now.
Yeah,
and they're all doing the same stuff.
Like the first 2 seasons mostly kind of just go off the back of the very first movie, but then this new season has a lot of aspects of calling back to the later movies as well, the other movies that they made, not just the first Karate Kid movie. And they have like those characters, and that's the other thing. It blows my mind that they've gotten so many of those characters who were in the original movies, and they've brought them all back. There are so many of them.
Yeah, most of all the main ones, like especially the old Cobra Kai gang.
Yeah, there was that episode with the whole gang. Yeah,
but Cobra Kai never dies. But I'm Team Eagle Fang now. So as soon as you said Eagle Fang, I'm like, of course, Johnny Lawrence, you silly man. I love you so much. But yeah, fantastic show. Don't sleep on it. Go and watch it now. So we're going to transition from the Cobra Kai podcast to, I guess we'll talk about video games now,
Oh, is this going to be a video game podcast? Oh, I didn't realize. All right, I'm going to leave. I'll leave this one to you. I'll see you later.
Sweet as. So I'm going solo now. So yeah, guys, we are going to be talking about the secret of mana. And for probably the longest time growing up, I called it mana because Australia.
I don't blame you.
Especially with like Diablo, they had mana in Diablo, and I was like, I need some mana. Goddamn Australian language is funny. So yeah, we're going to talk about the secret of mana. We're going to start with the beginning of the game, the development of the game. We'll get into the story. But Raw, please tell me and all our listeners when and how did you first play this game?
So when I was quite young, I never had a Super Nintendo, and this game came out on Super Nintendo. But I went over to my cousin's house, who did have a Super Nintendo. He didn't have that many games for it yet, but one of the games he did have was The Secret of Mana. And I remember the first time I ever saw it, he was playing it. and I was just a little kid, and I just sat behind him and just watched for like hours. My mum was over there visiting like my auntie and uncle, and they were chatting and they were talking for like hours or whatever. And I just sat there and I didn't say a word, and I was just mesmerized by this game that my cousin was playing, and I could not look away. And I just wanted to sit there all day and just stare at it. I didn't even care if I was playing it or not. I just wanted to sit there and stare at it and watch him play it. And that was the first time I ever saw that game, and it just blew my mind.
And that's how Raw got into Twitch.
That's how I got into the idea of watching other people play video games.
Yeah.
Then yeah, after that I'd go over this cousin's house like heaps when I was young, like all the time. I'd be there all the time. And every time I'd go over there, we'd kind of start playing The Secret of Mana together from the beginning, just over and over and over again, because it was a game that you could play multiplayer as like co-op. You could take control of the three main characters. We'll get into that, I'm sure, in a second. But you could play it co-op. So me and him would sit there controlling a character. But every time I would come over, we'd start the game again from the beginning, just over and over again. So like the beginning few couple of hours of that game is like ingrained in my mind, because I've probably started the beginning of that game probably 100 times over.
Yeah, there's a lot of games like that for me too.
But yeah, and then throughout the years, I never got a Super Nintendo myself, but then many years later, I installed a little Super Nintendo emulator on my PC, and I played it over and over and over again. And I've probably started the game, I don't even know how many times, but I've only ever seen the ending of the game once. Because it's actually extremely hard. It was a very difficult game, okay?
It is. And like I think a lot of those games around that time, especially on the Super Nintendo, I think they were purposely made to be hard for replayability, because it was sort of coming from they were transitioning from the arcade era where it's like, give us coins to keep playing, and that's why those old school arcade games were just either never ending or just super difficult, so people would keep putting in money. And then transitioning into home console, they didn't really like it didn't transition. They're like, well, they're not giving us money, but we're still gonna make it stupid hard, because I guess the games industry wasn't like it is now, where we have options coming out of our ears, where back then it was like you get one game every 20 years and you play it forever.
Yeah, exactly. But at least like with this game, you could save the game at certain points. But even then, like I didn't have like the internet back then or anything. So there were parts where I would get to certain parts in the game and I wouldn't know what to do. And you couldn't just, I'll just Google what to do next. No, there was no Google. I couldn't do that. I didn't know what to do. And sometimes I would just get stuck and I would have to stop playing the game and leave and, pick it up again, maybe months and months later, and try to figure it out again. And yeah, it was a hard bloody life, I tell you. These kids these days, they don't know what they're bloody missing.
Yeah, bloody Google. It's right. Like when I play old retro games, like when I played Earthbound and stuff like that, it's like how did kids play these games? And I think at the end of the day, we just trial and error.
Yeah,
trial and error until you got it, or you walked away and never played that game ever again.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And there was, I guess, if you happen to have like some friends who also had the same game, like you'd meet up together at school and you'd have to like talk it through, like, oh, you do, and I did this, and then like, what if we do this other thing? And then like that weekend when you had some time, then you'd go and try to figure out, like you'd use their information. It's like that was the only way to kind of get information from other people. You just on the playground talk to them and like and try to just figure it out from there.
Talking to people, as if I would.
Terrible.
Yeah, I remember. I think the only thing I really talked about at school was The Simpsons. It's like, oh, did you watch The Simpsons last night? Hell yes.
Didn't everyone?
Yeah. If you did, oh my God, I don't even want to get into The Simpsons because it makes me sad. Anyway,
welcome to The Simpsons podcast.
Well, yeah, welcome. Actually, I did want to start a Simpsons podcast, but there's already a really good Simpsons podcast that is Australian out there, so I just went, no, not doing it. Anyway, The Secret of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu 2 in Japan is an action role-playing game developed and published by Square, who are now Square Enix. It was released on the Super Nintendo on August 6, 1993 in Japan, October 3rd, 1993 in North America, and oh my god, November 24th, 1994 in Australia and Europe, because it needed a whole year to fax the game over to Australia from Japan.
Page by page.
Imagine that happening now. 1994 was a huge year for video games. As I said, Earthbound, Donkey Kong Country, Super Metroid, Tekken, The Need for Speed, The Beavis and Butthead, the game, and the amazing Earthworm Jim game, which if you haven't played that, you definitely should.
I have.
While looking into this, I found they even made a home improvement game on the SNES, and it was a 2D platformer, and I didn't understand why.
I mean, all I have to say about that is,
Damn. Like I do that noise all the time, like, and no one knows what I'm talking about. I'm like, did no one watch Home Improvement? Like, yeah, I'm like, uncultured swine.
It's not because nobody knows what you're talking about. It's because you're old now.
Damn it.
That's an old show for old people who are old.
Yeah, we old now. That sucks. Yeah, I looked it up and I was like, oh, it's a 2D platform, like action platform. He's like whipping some stuff. I'm like,
yeah.
What's this got to do with Home Improvement?
Actually, nothing. Like literally nothing at all. They were just capitalizing on the fact that it was such a massive TV show at the time. They're like, we could make a game and we can license it as Home Improvement, and it can be about literally anything. It's still going to make some money because people are going to buy it.
And luckily, I didn't, because I never knew it existed. They could have made like a Sims game. That would have made more sense. You build a house.
Actually, it would have made a lot of sense for a Home Improvement game.
I might call Tim Allen, see if he wants to collab on a new game.
What is Tim Allen even up to these days?
I think he's living off that Toy Story money, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Maybe he's working on a new Santa Claus film. I don't know. I hope so. What a series. So Raw, what was a young Raw doing in 1994? And that actually rhymed. I'm disgusted with myself. What was 1994 like for you? Like, what were you doing?
I don't think I played this in 94. I didn't play it till like years later, I think, that my cousin had it. But I don't know, I would have been 94, I would have been 8. So who remembers what they were doing at 8? I don't know. I was in primary school.
I was 6.
Bloody running around. I had a Nintendo, but I didn't have a Super Nintendo. And I remember I had like the OG Legend of Zelda, the gold cartridge.
Yes, nice.
And that was like my first kind of foray into like fantasy games and stuff. And so I was, I don't know, running around collecting rocks and being like, oh, this rock looks fancy. This is a magic rock. this rock has the magical powers, and this is a lightning rock, and this is a fire rock, and gotta collect all the rocks, and
then I'll have the cousins.
Yeah, and then just throw rocks at people. So, I don't know. I was just running around outside a lot, riding the bike. I was doing, I think I was doing like karate back then.
So you were in Cobra Kai. Nice.
Yeah, I kicked Cobra Kai's ass, man. No, actually, yeah, I did karate when I was a kid, and then I moved on to Taekwondo, and I did Taekwondo for many, many years until I was in my late teens. And little known fact about me, I was a 5-time state and 2-time Australian champion.
No joke, really?
No joke. 2-time national champion. Black under 18s black belt.
Oh my god. It's like Cobra Kai is about your life. All Valley champion. But not in Australia.
And then I swept the leg.
With a legal kick. Oh, that's cool. How come you stopped? Just grew up?
I tore the ligaments in my ankle.
Ouch.
Playing like with my neighbors, playing like this game that's kind of like dodgeball, but the ball you have to dodge is a tennis ball, and if you get hit, it was like being thrown full pelt at your face.
Yep.
So I was trying to dodge the ball, and I like twisted my ankle so bad I tore the ligaments.
Ouch.
And then when that healed, I was riding my BMX at a BMX track, and I hit a rock just before hitting a jump, and I flew off the bike, and I tore the ligaments in my knee. I tore my PCL.
My
So
God.
then I couldn't go. Like that happened right after my ankle healed, and then after that healed, I was like halfway through year 12, and I was like, well, year 12 is a hard year. I'm not going to go back until I finish year 12. And then I finished year 12, and then I moved into state, and then I started TAFE and working and
adulthood,
partying and having a car and drinking and
KFC.
Yeah. KFC.
Colonel's delicious chicken. Well,
Popcorn chicken.
Miguel broke his whole back and was in a coma, and he came back and did karate. So your excuse is not valid.
You're right. I should have just gotten up out of my my broken leg PCL, whatever, just gone for a walk and just believed in myself. I just needed the power of belief, and I could have done anything.
You need the power of Jesus in anime. You just didn't have it back then.
That's right. I have the power of God and anime on my side.
What a quote. I use it every day. Every single day. But speaking of Jesus and anime, The Secret of Mana is actually a sequel to Seiken Densetsu, but players in North America would know the game as Final Fantasy Adventure, and was released on the Game Boy in 1991. And in Europe, it was called Mystic Quest, which is an epic name. In 1987, Square began development on a game called The Emergence of Excalibur, and it was intended to be a game released for the Famicom Disk System, which would have come on 5 floppy disks, which was unbelievable back then.
Huge.
Hey, this would have made it the biggest game on the system at the time. The game would eventually be renamed Seiken Densetsu, and Square actually began taking pre-orders for it. Seiken Densetsu actually turned out to be too ambitious for the few people working at Square at the time, and the company entered dire financial straits, which almost bankrupted them. They had the money to release one more game, but they believed that it would be their last game. The game they ended up releasing was named Final Fantasy, as Square thought it'd be the last title they'd ever released before they went under, which is, it's nuts, where they're like, we have no money, we're bankrupt, let's just go Hail Mary on one game. Back in like the late 80s, let's release Final Fantasy, and the world has never been the same.
Just a little unknown indie game you might have never heard of called Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy. So around the time you were playing Secret of Mana, were there any other like JRPGs you're playing? Did you discover Final Fantasy around that time, or?
I had seen Final Fantasy, but I wasn't super into the idea of the turn-based combat when I was younger. I really liked, because before that I was super into The Legend of Zelda, which was like this kind of real-time combat game, and that blew me. I loved that. And so when I discovered when I'd seen Final Fantasy and that had that turn-based combat, as a kid I wasn't very much into that at all. Later on, as I got older, I got much more into the idea of that turn-based combat being really cool, and I like it now. But as a kid, I was not interested in that turn-based style. So that's why kind of when I came across Secret of Mana, it had so much of that Final Fantasy feel to it, yet it had this real-time combat at the same time, which kind of had that massive like Legend of Zelda feel as well. I just gravitated to that completely.
Oh, 100%. I think we'll get to it right now. Oh, what a bloody misdirection. Anyway, Seiken Densetsu is actually a Final Fantasy spin-off, while also being the first game in the Mana series, being developed under the name Gemma Knights, or maybe Gamma Knights, I'm not too sure. Game, director, artist, writer, Koichi Ishii. I hate saying these names because I always butcher them, and I'm sorry, sir, if I butchered your name, but I went to an Australian public school.
That was correct. Koichi Ishii.
Oh yeah, I'm the best. Wanted to make a Zelda-like game with a more role-playing influence from the Final Fantasy series, which is what you discovered that all by yourself, Raw. Do you feel proud?
Oh, I so do. I was just such a smart little kid.
You're ahead of your time.
I was such a little shit as a little kid.
Oh, same. I don't know how my mum didn't throw me off a bridge, to be honest. The Mana series, of which Final Fantasy Adventure was the first game, was the result of Koichi Ishii's desire to create a fictional world. In Ishii's opinion, Mana is not a series of video games, but rather a world which is illustrated by and can be explored through video games. When working on the series, Ishii drew inspiration from abstract images from his memories of childhood, as well as movies and fantasy books that captivated him as a child, with books like The Neverending Story, Lewis Carroll's Alice Adventures in Wonderland, and J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. I think the Zelda and the Final Fantasy influence is quite obvious. But did you see these other, like, you know, book and movie influences, like, when you were playing, or like do you notice it now, like, as an adult?
I can definitely see some Neverending Story influence, because there is a part where a lot of the game happens on kind of like one big landmass island, but then it suddenly opens up, and it just out of nowhere, and this blew my mind when it first happened. You start moving over to other islands, and the way you're able to travel around the world later on is kind of like Neverending Story. You jump on the back of this giant flying creature, and he flies you around, and the way it moves and flies around looks a lot like, what was that? What was the name of the thing that they ride on Neverending Story?
I
can't remember what it's called.
Not a monster, is it?
But it's pretty much almost exactly like that. You jump on the back of this giant creature that looks very similar to the Neverending Story one, and the way it moves through the sky and everything reminds me of that as well. It's clearly straight out of that movie.
Falcor.
That's it. That's right.
What a good movie, though. Like, it's so good.
Yeah,
so much practical effects.
Oh yeah, big time. But I don't know. I didn't see so much of like Alice in Wonderland. I can see a little bit of Lord of the Rings. There's definitely a bit of the old school kind of like King Arthur. You right at the beginning, you pull a magical sword out of a rock that nobody else is able to pull out, you know?
Classic story trope.
Very, very classic. Yeah.
Speaking of tropes, so with Second Densetsu being a spin-off game / smaller project, there were no plans for there to be ever be a sequel. But with Square growing in size and the popularity and power of the upcoming but unreleased SNES CD, they got to work on a follow-up. Development of the SNES CD format started in this is a very interesting story. In 1988, the birth year of Wilbur Sprinkle, when Nintendo signed a contract with Sony to produce a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES. The system was to be compatible with existing SNES titles as well as titles released for the Super Disc format. Under their agreement, Sony would develop and retain control over the Super Disc format, with Nintendo thus effectively ceding a large amount of control of software licensing to Sony. Further, Sony would also be the sole benefactor of licensing related to the music and movie software that it had been aggressively pursuing as a secondary application. Nintendo President Hiroshi Yamauchi, hell yeah, was already wary of Sony at this point and deemed it unacceptable, as Sony was the sole provider of the audio chip, the S-SMP, used in the SNES, and required developers to pay for an expensive development tool from Sony. Furthermore, Yamauchi started to see a more favorable partner in Philips, and we all know how that went. Philips was also one of Sony's biggest rivals in the entire industry, so in order to counter the proposed agreement, Yamauchi sent Nintendo of America president Minoru Arakawa, and it was actually his son-in-law, and executive Howard Lincoln, to the Netherlands to negotiate a more favorable contract with Philips. The Philips deal was meant to do two things: give Nintendo back its stranglehold on software, and gracefully screw Sony. Which is, I had to put the word screw because they said gracefully F-word Sony, and I know this is G-rated material, you bloody wank.
I'm really holding back the swears. It's hard.
Let it out, Raw. Let it out. At the June 1991 Consumer Electronics Show, Sony announced its SNES-compatible cartridge/CD console, the PlayStation. The next day, Nintendo revealed its partnership with Philips at the show, a surprise to the entire audience, including Sony. While Nintendo and Sony attempted to sort out their differences between the two, and 300 prototypes of the PlayStation were created and software for the systems was being developed, in 1992 a deal was reached allowing Sony to produce SNES-compatible hardware, with Nintendo retaining control and profit over the games. The two organizations never repaired the rift between them, and by the next year Sony had dropped further development of the Super NES CD-ROM and instead refocused its efforts on developing its own console for the next generation of consoles, which became known as the PlayStation. And by God, it's such an anime story, and I love it.
It really is.
So I was obviously a little too young when this all happened, but it really could have been a different story if Sony and Nintendo teamed up here, right?
Oh yeah, big time. There are some really good like little mini documentaries that kind of go on like all the drama that happened between Nintendo and Sony during this period that led to the creation of the PlayStation. And it's unbelievably fascinating, the amount of just backstabbing and stuff that went on. It was ridiculous, and it's hilarious at the same time. But yeah, like if all of that hadn't have happened and they hadn't have gone behind each other's backs and done all this stuff, we would never have, the PlayStation, the juggernaut that it is now. They would have just made parts, the CD parts and stuff for the Nintendos, and they would have worked together. It would have been Sony and Nintendo working together to create one console.
Oh, we could have had The Last of Us on the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah,
because that's what would happen.
Yep. Totally. Motion controls and everything.
I'm pretty sure Sony tried to work with Sega as well. And Sega,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Sega kind of was like, we don't want to work with you. And now look at that.
Sega was massive. I watched, because I love like little YouTube documentaries that go for like half an hour or 40 minutes or whatever and go delve deep into these kind of stuff. And I watched one, not that long ago about the kind of the rise and fall of Sega. And that's another fascinating story. I definitely recommend like watching something about that.
Oh, it's so good. And it is a big rise and a big fall, because basically Sega is just a software company now. They just make some games, they have some IP that they can share around the world.
Yeah, because there was a period there where they were the biggest gaming company in the world. They were bigger than Nintendo.
Yes.
And then they've gone from being literally the biggest console and gaming company in the world to what they are now.
To making Yakuza games.
Yep.
Basically.
They are great games, though.
Speaking of Yakuza games, while working on this new CD-ROM project codenamed Maru Island, they had many, this is Square, we're going back to Square now, they had many ambitious ideas for a new game which never made it to the final game, with the SNES CD never being anything. Some of these ideas were pretty cool. They had planned to have a huge world with multiple areas and routes the player could travel through, and they wanted to have a time travel element to the game, and even alternate endings. It's been said that at least 40% of the game had to be removed due to the space limitations of said cartridges. The time travel concept was actually used for a future game, just a little tiny indie game called Chrono Trigger, which was released in 1995 on the Super Nintendo. It was most likely this reason that most of Square's future games came out on the more powerful PlayStation, because they started making started moving on their Final Fantasy games over and most of their games over to the PlayStation because of the CD-ROM capability. Super ambitious, and it would have been hard to cut that much from the game. Did you ever play Chrono Trigger, by the way?
I played a little bit of it many years later, like when I was going through my days of playing Super Nintendo ROMs on my shitty old PC as a little kid. I did jump into Chrono Trigger a bit then, but that was once again one of those games where I started and I never finished it. I liked it. It was great.
I want to play it. I've never played it, but I got a few friends who absolutely love this game, and I want to play it eventually. It's just this between the old games I want to play and the new games coming out, and then goddamn pirate games coming out. It's hard to find time. for Chrono Trigger.
Well, one of the things is you'll find that it does look as well a lot like Secret of Mana in not only the art style of the backgrounds and all that and the pixel art, because it was the same kind of team working on it basically, but also the character art styles and that, because the character art, I don't know if you're going to mention this or not from your head, but the character art in that for both Secret of Mana and Chrono Trigger were done by the guy who made the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. The original manga artist of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. He did the character art for these games. Hell
yeah. That's why it is just pixels, but they're really, really cool looking pixels.
Oh yeah. Akira Toriyama, that's his name.
Yep, nailed it. And why can't I be good at saying names? God damn it. I hate everything. So there are a few changes that they made from Seiken Densetsu to the Secret of Mana. The team hoped to build on the foundation they had with Seiken Densetsu, and they included several modified elements from that game and from other popular Square titles in Secret of Mana. In addition to having obviously better graphics and sound quality than its predecessor, the attack power gauge was changed to be more engaging, and the weapon leveling system replaced Seiken Densetsu's system of leveling up the speed of the attack gauge. The party system also received an upgrade from the first Mana game. Instead of temporary companions who could not be upgraded, party members became permanent protagonists and could be controlled by other players. The multiplayer component was not part of the original design, but was added when the developers realized they could easily make all three characters human controlled. And you said you played this with other people.
Yeah.
Was it like an easy experience, like playing multiplayer games like this on a SNES? A Super SNES?
It was extremely well done for this game. At any point during the gameplay, as long as because you have to you play through the first little bit of the game and you unlock the other two characters as you go along. And once those other characters are unlocked, somebody could just pick up controller 2, hit start, and then just take control of one of the other characters. Just like that. And I think you, I can't remember if it was you hit select or I think it maybe you hit select and it would allow you to jump from one character to another. So you could just on the fly go from controlling one character to a different character. And even if you're playing single player, you could do the same thing. But so you could swap characters and all that, and everything's just all happening on one screen. It's wasn't split screen or anything like that because you all stay together. But yeah, it worked extremely well. So like I'd go over my cousin's place, he'd be an hour into the game or whatever, and I'd just sit down next to him, hit start in the controller, and we'd just jump straight into it, be playing together.
It's so cool that, and then you could jump out, and then the AI would take control of the other character. Like it was exactly. Jump in, jump out, which is really cool. So the English translation for Secret of Mana was completed by Ted Woolsey in only 30 days, only weeks after the Japanese release. Critics have suggested that the translation was done hastily so that the game could be released in North America for the 1993 holiday season. The issue he faced was there generally wasn't enough room in the memory of the game to include an English script that matched the length of the Japanese original. This meant that he was forced to cut or change parts of the dialogue. He was also known for adding corny jokes and puns. To some fans, his work bastardized the original intent of the creators of the game, while others loved the character that he inserted into the otherwise bland scenes, which is a bit freaking rough. Secret of Mana had a very bare-bones script. This would have been a huge undertaking, seeing as Secret of Mana was an RPG with a lot of text. Any issues the fans might have had with Secret of Mana's translation might be forgivable due to the time constraints on its creation. So I know in games like Earthbound, I think I bring up Earthbound literally every week anyway, because it's such a good game. The English translation to that game was very wacky, and like it kind of didn't make sense sometimes. How did the translation feel for you in Secret of Mana?
So all the story and everything still makes sense and all that works. But as I said there, I think the original didn't have all the there were a lot of jokes added into the original one and puns and stuff, and they were pretty corny. But I actually kind of loved that.
Yeah.
I really like those bad, corny jokes and puns. I'm all about that. So I actually loved it. But if you did want to play through it like now or anytime recently, people have made ROMs of the game and where they've just fully translated the original Japanese into English rather than using the kind of the version that Ted Woolsey here made. They've just kind of word for word try to translate the original Japanese into these custom ROMs, and then you could actually play it that way in English. They're just made by fans.
Have you played any of those versions, or?
I have not, because I don't know, maybe it's the nostalgia, but I when I was a little kid, I played the English version as it was, and that kind of just stuck with me. But that being said, I have played there was the next game, Senken Densetsu 3, which didn't come out in English. And then online, people made fan translations of that as well, because it never got released in the West with an English translation. So they just made fan translations in the ROMs and released those online. So that's how I was able to play those Senken Densetsu 3, the next game.
Hell yeah. It's so cool that people take the time out of their like lives to pretty much do that for other people. Like, it's just such a nice thing to do.
Yeah,
because I wouldn't.
I mean, I feel like it kind of says a lot about how much the fans of these games just absolutely love them and want other people to experience what they experienced while playing through them.
Yeah, no, it's a nice guy thing to do. But I just don't have the time. Maybe I'll translate Sea of Thieves for everyone.
What language did you translate it to?
I'll translate it to Australian.
Oh, okay. So there'll just be heaps more swear words in it.
Yeah, just a lot of beeps, a lot of beeps.
Just chucker in the ute, eh?
Where do you want to put this loot? It's chucker in the ute. Excuse me, sir. How'd you get in my house? Yeah, chucker in the ute, eh?
Chucker in the ute, eh?
Oh, I love those cartoons. So good. The original score for The Secret of Mana was composed and produced by Hiroki Kikuta. Secret of Mana was Kikuta's first video game score, and he encountered difficulties in dealing with the hardware limitations of the Super Nintendo, which seems to be kind of the theme of the creating of this game. With they wanted to do more, but Super Nintendo had limitations, obviously. Kikuta tried to express in the music two contrasting styles to create an original score, which would be neither pop music nor standard video game music. Kikuta worked on the music mostly by himself, spending nearly 24 hours a day in his office, alternating between composing and editing to create a soundtrack that would be, according to him, cough, cough, immersive and three-dimensional. I'm not coughing because I don't believe I literally just had to cough. It sounds like I'm being such a dick to this guy.
His music was immersive
I just had to cough.
Three-dimensional.
Oh my god, with the timing. Wow. Rather than having sound engineers create the samples of instruments like most game music composers of the time, Kikuta made his own samples that matched the hardware capabilities of the Super Nintendo. These custom samples allowed him to know exactly how each piece would sound on the system's hardware, so he did not have to worry about differences between the original composition and the Super Nintendo. Kikuta stated in 2001 that he considered the score for Secret of Mana to be his favorite creation. So the music in this game, and like most Nintendo's games, are actual bangers. I usually listen to the music of whatever game I'm sort of finding information about, and this music is so good. Do you have a favorite like piece of music or moment in the game where the music really stood out to you? If you can remember.
Honestly, it's just the beginning. It's just you boot up the game. There's this like whale cry sound that plays, and then it goes to the menu screen or whatever, the hit start to continue. And the very first track that plays, I can still hear it in my head right now. And this is, I'm not reaching or anything when I say this. the Secret of Mana soundtrack is still to this day my favorite all-time video game soundtrack ever. I
good.
still listen to it regularly. And it is just this game would not be the same if it wasn't for the amazing music that they've put in this. Like, it just mind-blowingly good for the sounds that they were able to compose using like the sound chip that's available on the SNES. Like, one thing I think that I only know this because I watched like a little documentary not that long ago about the making of Secret of Mana. Like, this dude, like you said, it was his first video game soundtrack. He was really young. He was a self-taught composer. And you mentioned that he was in his office nearly 24 hours a day working on this. But the thing is, he wasn't in his office 24 hours a day for like a few weeks or even a few months. Most video game soundtrack creators back then would have had like maybe a month or two. He worked on this soundtrack for an entire year, which was like an unprecedented amount of time to be able to have to create the soundtrack for a game back then. Nobody had that amount of time. So he was like 24 hours a day sleeping in his office for like nearly an entire year to build this soundtrack. And it is mind-blowingly good.
And it's like, it's not like there's, oh man, I can't even speak. It's not like there's one theme either. It changes themes and so drastically as well. And there's so many tracks.
Oh
like
yeah, it's massive.
I couldn't even tell you how many tracks I was listening to. I was like, look at all the songs. Oh my God. But yeah, like
I don't know how they even fit that much music onto the cartridge.
Well, that's why they had to cut out the time travel, because of this dude's music.
Yeah.
God damn it. Yeah, and like just the sounds that he got, while they still sound like, you know, a Super Nintendo game, it goes above and beyond what, like, say if you played like a Mario game, right? Where it just goes above and beyond. It adds that little extra realness, if that makes sense, to a 16-bit era game.
Yeah, somehow they were able to make this tiny little sound chip that makes bleeps and bloops sound almost like an orchestra.
Yes.
And that's the great thing is, if you go look up the soundtrack now, orchestras have actually recreated like the entire soundtrack from scratch, like entire actual full-on orchestras.
I love that.
And you can just sit there and listen. I just sit there and listen to it. I like put it on when I'm at work sometimes, and it's just amazing.
I think I was we were saying this last week about the Final Fantasy X soundtrack and how good that is and how orchestras do it. And I really want to go see The Legend of Zelda in orchestra, like in a symphony. Because I love Zelda so much, and like especially the Ocarina of Time. If I saw that live, I think I would cry.
That would be amazing to see live.
But I think they do a lot in Melbourne. Too far away.
Yeah, but probably not happening too much in the last year or so.
Nope, because this world sucks. But yeah, like music, I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Music is such an important piece of, I guess, any kind of media, like movies, video games, TV shows. Like just imagine old mate pulls out the sword and then you get that. It would ruin your life. Was Seinfeld even out back then?
It was mid-90s, yeah. I think probably.
He pulls out the sword. Seinfeld soundtrack comes on. But yeah, I just need an excuse to press that button. Yeah. Oh, go follow Raw Genesis on Twitch for kazoo. Man, have you done much kazooing lately?
Not too much because of the whole DMCA stuff that's been going on.
So highly accurate kazoo covers.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of kazoo covers. But I would play the original music in the background, just at low volume, and I'd kazoo over the top of it. But obviously I can't do that now, because now I'll get DMCA'd and bloody banned off Twitch for that shit. And that's I got. Did I tell you I got a DMCA strike?
I think you might have posted about it. Like you got one.
Yeah, I got a DMCA strike for playing just, that sound of what's his name? Australian singer, and he's in that American cowboy song where he's screaming over the mountains.
Oh, Jimmy Barnes?
Jimmy Barnes! And he's in that song that's called Big Enough.
Yeah.
And there's that just one part of the song where he's like over the mountains and he's giant and he's just screaming.
Basically a meme.
Yeah. That's the only part of the song I played. I just played the sound, and I didn't show it. I just played the sound of Jimmy Barnes screaming. And I got copyright claimed for the sound of Jimmy Barnes screaming.
I hate the DMCA thing. It's so backwards and it's so outdated. Like how can you justify like using the DMCA stuff against someone using a like 10-second clip of Jimmy Barnes screaming? Like how is that justified? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the whole point there is like they're not losing. Jimmy Barnes isn't losing any money, right?
No.
Like nobody came to my stream to listen to 10 seconds of Jimmy Barnes screaming so they could avoid going and listening to the song on YouTube.
I'm sure there's one person.
To avoid buying his music or anything. But at the same time, Twitch has been doing a really shit job of managing stuff at their end as well.
100%. I think because like DMCA is nothing new. Like, you know, YouTube went through all this a few years back, but they put in systems to help creators like understand what's getting DMCA'd and systems to remove it if you have to, et cetera, where Twitch is just like, you got a strike now. We're not going to tell you when and how and where it happened, but you just got a strike now. It's like, God damn it.
And it's not just that. You get banned and they'll ban you and never tell you why.
Yeah. And then you can't even beg. You can't even like try and counter it and be like,
yeah,
what?
People beg to be like, just tell me why I got banned. All right, if you think I got banned for a right reason, okay, I'm not even disputing if you banned me for the correct reason or not. Maybe I did something wrong and I didn't know. Yeah. But at least tell me what it was so I don't do it in the future. Like, but they won't tell people.
No, they're like literally, like personally, between you and me, because no one's listening right now. Just me and you in the room.
Just me and you here.
Like Twitch is literally a few bad decisions away from me going back to YouTube and streaming over there. Like if YouTube has literally, like, I think in the past few days have added a clip feature and a few other features for YouTube gaming and the live streams, which is something they should have done a long time ago. But like YouTube's making moves, and I've always said, if YouTube can like give me everything sort of Twitch has and does it like equally as good, I would literally highly consider streaming over on YouTube. Especially as a variety streamer. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the only thing that kind of stops a lot of people, me included, from streaming on YouTube, and I actually did stream on YouTube a bunch of times, and like nobody came and watched.
That's where I started over on YouTube.
Well, one of the things is a lot of the time, if you live stream on YouTube, a lot of the time nobody sees that unless you've already got a quite substantial following on YouTube from videos. If you don't have that subscriber base to start watching your streams, like it's not easy to go find who's live on YouTube right now.
That's one of the problems they have. Yes.
Yeah. So everyone talks about how terrible the discoverability is on Twitch to find new people, and I completely agree. But it's even harder to find people who are live streaming on YouTube. It's easier to find people who upload videos, obviously, but it's nearly impossible to find people who are live streaming at that time unless they are someone who has millions of followers already. So I was just going on from because you brought up Twitch.
Yeah.
Literally an hour before you called me for this podcast, I tweeted out, like just before, I tweeted out, how does Twitch, because Twitch made another change where they've made it so there are all problems with embedding Twitch stream other websites and stuff, and it gives people a warning message saying, to get the best experience, you should go watch this on Twitch, and it stops like every 15 minutes a message pops up if you're watching on any other website. So if you use like when you're using like a multi-link, if you're streaming with somebody else and you're both streaming the same game together and you use a multi-link and then people click on that multi-link to watch both streams at the same time, every 15 minutes a warning message pops up and they've got to get rid of it out of the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I tweeted out just before this, before we started talking. How does Twitch go from terrible decision to terrible decision so consistently for so many years? Who is even making these choices, and what the fuck are they even thinking?
Exactly. You could say that about any decision they've made in the past year too.
It's been so unbelievably consistently bad choice after bad choice after bad choice for years.
And they don't read the room very well either.
No, they don't.
They're like, oh, everyone's
Twitch is a
mad at
mess.
us for this reason. Let's do something stupid.
So yeah, Twitch is shit. Hey everyone, come follow us on Twitch, by the way. Come check us out.
Twitch.tv/Wilbur Wilbur Genesis. New co-op channel. But yeah, like I'll counter the YouTube argument where, because I did Let's Plays. That was my first sort of like content creation. And then once I got better internet at my mother's, because I kind of wanted to live stream, I thought it was pretty cool. And then I got better internet, so I was able to. And then I think I went from like I'm still a small channel. I went from like 600 subs, and I streamed on YouTube for about 7 months until I moved to Twitch. And in 7 months, I think I went from 600 to like 1,300 subs. And my viewership on YouTube was about the same, maybe a little bit higher than I get on Twitch. I was getting, I could get like, depending on what I was playing, like if I was playing something like Overwatch, you could easily get like 50 plus viewers watching. Where if you try to play Overwatch on Twitch, you're buried. Unless you have like a following already. Cough, cough. But the audience on YouTube is very different to Twitch. Twitch seems a bit more mature. The YouTube audience seem very casual, fickle, a little bit young. But yeah, as I said, Twitch is a few decisions away from making me reconsider going back, because you can get found. The problem with YouTube is if you're looking for live streams, it's absolutely difficult. But somehow my live streams, I think, just showed up in people's searches or recommended feeds and stuff like that. And that's how I got sort of discovered. But yeah, they need to, YouTube needs to focus more on getting people to treat YouTube like they treat Twitch, where you go to Twitch, you're like, ooh, what game I'm going to watch? What live stream I'm going to watch? Where YouTube's live stream stuff, it's like you try and find it, and then it takes you to some weird thing, and then you got to dig down like a few more clicks, and then you're somewhere else. And it's not, it's definitely not the easiest way to find live streaming, but you can get found pretty easily.
Yeah, but like with what you're saying, a lot of people have made that same decision that you're talking about, and I know for a fact a lot of people have either just moved completely to other platforms and to YouTube and stuff, or I know that a bunch of people have canceled their affiliate program with Twitch, because then that allows them, if you're not an affiliate, you are once again allowed to then stream to multiple platforms at the same time. If you're an affiliate, technically that's against TOS, but if you're not an affiliate, you can use like something like Restream to stream your stream both on Twitch and on YouTube at the same time.
Yeah, I think didn't Hyper do that?
Yeah, and a bunch of other people have done it as well that I've seen have been mentioning it.
And plus, they don't want to give Twitch any money. Also, that's another reason why people do that too.
Yeah.
Oh, Twitch, please just be better. Speaking of Twitch, we're going to talk about a little bit of the reception of The Secret of Mana. The Secret of Mana was reviewed very well with high praise for its graphics, music, and use of multiplayer gameplay. According to Square Enix, as of February 2004, The Secret of Mana had shipped 1.83 million copies worldwide, with 1.5 million of those copies being shipped in Japan and 330,000 being shipped abroad. The abroad figure is challenged by gaming magazine Next Generation, who claim that the game sold over 500,000 copies in the US alone. which so no one ever proved anyone right. So who knows? The initial shipment of the games in Japan sold out within days of the release date. But almost 30 years later, Secret of Mana has become a much-loved game, with it always being on the top Nintendo lists, top RPG lists, and even best game lists of all time. Square would go on to create 2 more Mana games, The Trials of Mana and The Dawn of Mana, and also 6 spin-off games. A 3D remake was released for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and Microsoft Windows on February 15th, 2018. While the graphics in the I looked up the remake as well. So the graphics looked okay, but to me it kind of lost a bit of its charm. Did you play the remake at all?
I did not play the remake. I was considering playing it at some point, but I completely agree with you on that, where the original's kind of pixel art sprite style is just kind of this timeless art style that just still looks amazing to this day. Like, you can still play amazing brand new pixel art games that come out this year and they look fantastic.
Yes.
And pixel art is one of those art styles that kind of just really holds up over the years, unlike 3D, bad 3D from back in the day, back in like PS1 days. You play a lot of those games now and you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize it looked this bad. Yeah. But you play those old like pixel art Super Nintendo games these days and you're like, yep,
I've got
it's
3
exactly
words.
how I remember.
I got 3 words for you. Lara Croft's boobs.
all 3 polygons of them.
Yeah. Those like early like 3D sort of attempts, I guess they had to be made, like you had to start somewhere, right? But yeah, you go back, you're like, ew, this has not aged well. But you look at, Secret of Mana, for example, which came out sort of pre-PlayStation, you're like, man, this looks absolutely gorgeous.
It really does. And they did things that I hadn't seen done in other games like that. At least, like, I'm sure other games did do it, but I hadn't seen it before, where they had these they had like transparent see-through water that you could walk in and you could see like to the ground, but it was like 50% transparency kind of. And they had like this really cool like lighting and shadow effects that they used with clouds and stuff and making shadows all along the ground.
Yeah, I think
I'd never seen that before.
I think they did that to save memory from what I can remember.
Yeah, that, like I remember they used some special they used like a technique to do it where they used like blending, where they made 2 layers and they had like, addition or subtraction blending, so it would like change to make things look darker or lighter depending if it was hit by the light or hit by shadow. But it just looks really good, like really good shadows. And I hadn't seen a game back then that had like shadow and lighting that in a pixel game that looked so good back then.
Oh, 100%. And I'm looking at the 3D remake now. I'm looking at a few screenshots, and it as I said, loses its charm, but it kind of makes it look cheap. Like it's not bad, but it's like I guess maybe, I don't know how well the remake sold, but yeah, I don't know. And I also don't know if they changed any because a few like remakes they might change a bit of the gameplay to more modern times. So I don't really know what they changed either, but I would always just recommend probably the original. Just looking at screenshots, not actually playing it, I'd probably just be like, play the original. It looks prettier.
Yeah, I reckon the original still holds up to this day.
You heard it here first, guys. From Raw Genesis himself, play the original or don't do anything.
You heard it here first. Nobody else has ever said that before.
I honestly can't think of anyone who has ever said that before. Not off the top of my head. If I do some more research. So we're going to talk a little bit about the story and gameplay, as always. I mean, every episode's big spoilers, but big spoilers, guys. So, the story takes place in a high fantasy world which contains an energy source named Mana, which is so mind-blowing. An ancient, technologically advanced civilization exploited Mana to construct the Mana Fortress, a flying warship. This angered the world's gods, who sent giant beasts to war with the civilization. The conflict was globally destructive and nearly exhausted all signs of mana in the world until a hero used the power of the Mana Sword to destroy the fortress and the civilization, and the world began to recover in peace. So the game begins as three boys from the small Potus, I think it's Potus.
I think it's Potos.
Potos village disobey their elders' instructions and trespass into a local waterfall, which is a local waterfall, where a treasure is said to be kept. One of the boys stumbles and falls into the lake, where he finds a rusty sword embedded in a stone. Guided by a disembodied voice, he pulls the sword free, inadvertently unleashing monsters in the surrounding countryside of the village. The villagers interpret the sword's removal as a bad omen and banish the boys from Potus forever. A traveling knight named Gemma recognizes the blade as a legendary mana sword and encourages the hero to re-energize it by visiting the 8 mana temples. During his journey, the hero is joined by the girl and the sprite, which in the game they don't have names. Throughout their travels, the trio is pursued by the Empire, which is hilarious. The Emperor and his subordinates are being manipulated by Thanatos. It kind of sounds like Thanos. An ancient
Thanatos.
Thanatos. An ancient sorcerer who hopes to create a new peaceful world, which is so evil. Due to his own body's deterioration, what is that? Thanatos? Thanatos is in need of a suitable body to possess. So that's basically, the introduction to the game and what they're doing. Very, with the 8 mana temples, that's very Zelda. But Roy, is there like any story moments that stood out to you?
It's more of a gameplay moment than a story moment, I guess. But there was this one part at the beginning that I had never seen a game do this before, and it was a very Dark Souls moment, long before Dark Souls, where at the beginning, kind of the ground, you have this sword, the ground gives way, you kind of fall into this big hole, and you just thrown into a boss battle, like super early into the game. Before this, you fought a couple little rabbites and little, just little creatures here and there to kind of teach you, all right, this is how you swing your sword. This is how your stamina bar works. And then the ground gives way, you fall into a giant hole, and you're in this humongous boss battle with this giant crab-looking creature. And the thing is, and you don't realize this as a kid especially, you're supposed to lose.
And you're one just of those games. Yep.
Yeah, and you're like struggling, and you're like, this is impossible. How do I do this? The kind of thing is, it kind of is impossible. You're supposed to lose to the first boss, and then Gemma the Knight actually saves you and takes you out, and then sends you off on your way. You need to power up the sword and all that stuff. But it was this moment that I'd never seen another game do back then. It blew my mind. It was like the same feeling that I guess a lot of people had in the first Dark Souls game, where you go up against that first boss and you're kind of expected to lose. Like I had no idea that was going to happen, and that blew my mind as a little kid. Like, I was just like, I'm not supposed to lose. I'm weak. I'm not good enough yet. I need to get good enough so I can then come back and do this.
It's sort of they did the same thing in Super Metroid as well, where you lose against the sort of big boss comes out straight away, and you're fighting, and you're like, I can't win, and then you lose. And you're like, how am I going to do this? But then like it just moves you on. It moves the story on, and you're like, okay, and you're like, so I meant, like, I can see stuff like that now, where I'm like, okay, I meant to lose this battle. I saw it in I think Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'm like, I'm just meant to lose to progress the story. But like as a kid, you're kind of like, no, I don't want to lose. Like, why am I losing? Like, this is gonna be so hard. And then the story continues. Like, okay, like I guess I was meant to lose, but I think it's a cool mechanic. When it's used sparingly. If every game did that, then it would probably lose a bit of its charm. But that crab boss looks pretty cool, by the way. Speaking of bosses, apparently it has about 38 bosses in this game. I'm not too sure if they're all big bosses or sort of like a half boss here and there or whatever. But did you have a favorite boss at all?
I don't think I really had a favorite boss. I remember one of the bosses that I hated the most was like the big tiger dude, and you fight him like really early on, I think.
Let's look him up.
Um,
Oh yeah, like a big tiger.
I
with
think it
little
was
spikes.
I think it was like the third boss. But there are so many bosses in this game.
I was looking up. I was looking at bosses, and one that stood out to me that looks really sick is the Dark Lich. A big like
The Dark Lich.
skeleton wizard looking thing.
Where's that one?
I think it might be like the second last boss.
Oh yeah. I very rarely got that far into the game. But yeah, there are heaps of bosses in this. There are so many bosses. There is a part where like you fight a wall. And
Yeah,
it's just like a wall
it's got
with
a face
eyes.
on it or eyes.
Yeah. There is a funny boss that's I think if you're looking at the list of bosses, it's like the biting lizard. It's like the fourth boss, and it's just this tiny little cute looking thing that looks like it would be like a little friend, a little pet, and it's like got a big smiley face, and then it just beats the shit out of you.
It's just called the biting lizard.
Yeah.
Like, ow, I wonder what this thing does. Ah, it bit me. How dare it? Yeah, the bosses are really cool. There's a lot of them too, but I think just as we said, the pixel art and just the colors they chose and just the way they did everything, the bosses just look really cool and really detailed for pixel art, which is cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about gameplay, and like many other role-playing games of the 16-bit era, Secret of Mana displays a top-down perspective in which the player character navigates the terrain and fights off hostile creatures. The game features 3 characters: the hero, the girl, and the sprite. In the original Super Nintendo release, these characters didn't have names, but they're actually officially named Randy, Prim, and I'm going to assume it's Popoi.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they had
Popoi.
names.
It's like Popoi, so it's like Randy, Prim, and then fucking almost like Poopy, almost.
Little poopy.
Little Poopy. The player can choose to control each of the characters at any time, which Raw told us before. Whichever character is currently selected, the other 2 companions are controlled via AI. The game may be played simultaneously by up to 3 players, made possible by the Super Multi-Tap accessory for the Super NES console. Raw, did you have a favorite character to play as? Did they play very differently, being sort of different, I guess, characters and heroes?
Kind of, yeah. Like your little sprite was more of a magic user. The girl was like a healer, but she was also... The funny thing is when you get each character, they come with their one kind of main weapon that's their weapon, but then you can give them anything. You pick up heaps of different weapons through the games. I think you end up with like maybe 10 or 15 weapons by the end. But like, you've got your main guy with the sword, but then the girl, her weapon is like knuckle dusters, and she's a martial artist, and it's kind of great. And I love that.
Hell yeah.
Like, is it like everyone would be swinging around swords and spears and throwing stars and boomerangs? Like, one of the weapons is a boomerang. And then she just run out there and just punch the shit out of whoever you're fighting. And it was great. And I kind of loved doing that. But yeah, obviously the main weapon is your big sword. Like that just fucks shit up.
Hell yeah. Looks really cool. Combat takes place in real time. Located at the bottom of the screen is a power bar, a gauge that determines the amount of damage done to an enemy when attacking. Swinging a weapon causes the gauge to empty and then quickly recharge, allowing that character to attack at its full strength. The party wields 8 different types of weaponry: a sword, a spear, bow, axe, boomerang, glove, whip, and javelin. All weapons can be upgraded 8 times, and repeated use of a weapon increases its skill level to a maximum of 8, unlocking a new special attack with each level. Weapons are upgraded with weapon orbs, which are found in dungeons and earned by defeating certain bosses. The player takes each orb to the blacksmith, located in most towns, who uses it to reforge one weapon. I mean, having a boomerang would be pretty cool, right?
It was
a
pretty
magic
fun.
boomerang.
It was one of the ones that I liked, and the more you level her up, the more kind of special attacks you could do. And what it kind of did with the power gauge or stamina gauge, whatever you want to call it, what would happen is if every time you powered it up, what you could do is you would hold down the attack button and you'd press the attack button, then it would do the basic attack, but then you hold it down and it would fill that gauge up. And then depending on how many times you've leveled up that weapon, it would refill that gauge over and over and over again. And it kind of actually turned it into a semi-turn-based kind of game, but you would still be controlling it in real time, where if you held it down longer and longer and longer and waited until you let go to do your big attack, the attack would be more and more powerful, and the attack would be more kind of, there'd be more to it. Like, you know, if you hold it down like 3 times, I can't remember the exact specifics, but if it filled up 3 times and you had the sword, you'd do a big spinning attack. Or if you did it like 5 times, you'd do a big spinning attack and then a jump and a lunge, and it would hit the ground and cause like a explosion or something. I don't know.
Like a big like weird super attack kind of thing.
Yeah. And the whole idea is a lot of the times you want to kind of wait and time it right so that you can hold it down and try to avoid attacks and stuff until the timing is right, and then unleash a super powerful attack at the right time. And it was kind of a way for them to make the game almost like semi-turn based if you knew what you were doing, because attack at certain times if you could figure it out, but also happen in real time at the same time.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think the Legend of Zelda influence is very on show with this kind of game, and I mean it could have gone the turn-based kind of combat, but that would have been like way too Final Fantasy at the time, and I think it found a pretty good balance with the combat, just the overall feel of the game.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Sir Genesis, why do you think this game? Why do you think you fell in love with this game? I mean, you probably touched on it a little bit, but what made you fall in love with this game, and why does it hold such high prestige in your little child heart?
I honestly, I think most of it for me was just right place, right time. Like I just happened to be in that period where I was super into like that fantasy style. I was super into Zelda and all that, and this just kind of took that Zelda feeling and just cranked it to the next level for me, and had done things that I'd never seen before done in a game when I was a kid. And it was just from that moment I mentioned earlier where I walked in, I saw my cousin playing it, and I heard the music and I saw the art and the style of the gameplay, and it just drew me in, and I could never forget about it since. And it's kind of just been stuck in my brain ever since. I haven't been able to get away from it. And it was one of those games where I just started playing it over and over and over again, almost never seeing the end of the game.
Yeah, you didn't have to back then.
I just loved playing it. It was just one of those things where I could sit there and just start playing it, and I'd be happy. It'd just be a good time.
Nostalgia is a powerful thing. What you're describing is kind of it's kind of how I fell in love with video games. Like I gamed here and there as a young child, like with the original Nintendo, with like Super Mario Brothers, and I feel like PC games here and there. But I think if I can remember one thing, I think my first love was always Pokemon Red. And I remember going to my mum went to her friend's house, and her friend had a young son who was around my age, and he was playing this game called Pokemon. I think he had Pokemon Blue, or he might have had Red, I don't know. He had the Pokemon game. And I was like, hey, what are you doing over there? And he's like, oh, I'm just playing Pokemon, you loser. I didn't say that. And he's like, he showed me, and I looked at it, and I was like, wow, this looks really cool. And he's like, would you like to play? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you can start a new game, just don't save. I'm like, okay. So I started a new game, and I remember talking to Professor Oak for the first time when you go to get your first Pokemon, and he's like, you can choose one of these 3 Pokemon, and you have to make a choice. And I was that whole thing, like, it blew my little child mind. Like I could not believe what I was playing. I was like, I get to choose this little character, and then you go off and you start like doing Pokemon battles and leveling up. It like literally just blew my whole world. And I think that's why Like Pokemon Red to me is kind of like that, where it'll be the game that'll stick with me for the rest of my life, and I'll always remember the first time I played it, and all the other times I played it, and I'll always want to play it. But yeah, nostalgia is bloody powerful.
It really is. I completely agree.
Sometimes it screws you over. God damn it! This nostalgia is ruining my vision. Help.
Oh, but yeah, that's what I mean. Like sometimes I'll just throw on the soundtrack. I'll just jump on YouTube, look up the Secret of Mana soundtrack, and just play it, and just be kind of transported back to my childhood.
You don't even have to play it.
Exactly. It's just that good.
I'm like that with Ocarina of Time soundtrack, because I played that game so much that I'll listen to the tracks and I'll be like, oh hell yeah. Did you have a favorite Zelda game?
Probably what's the one that came out on Super Nintendo? This is another one that I played at my cousin's house. I think so. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Yeah. This was another one. I didn't have a Super Nintendo, but my cousin did, and this was one of the other games he would have. But this wasn't a multiplayer game, so it's one of those times where if he wasn't there, I would play it, or I'd just watch him play it, and it was just a great time. Like I actually had the very first Zelda game. I had the gold cartridge on my NES.
Zelda 1.
But I think I was just too young at the time to really know what I was doing. And there's no saving in that. There isn't. You played it, you get as far as you can get, and then you start again. And there were, and there was no walkthrough really that I had. There was no internet. And there were certain parts in the game, like there is a part in the game in Zelda 1 where you go into a haunted forest and you start going through, you go in and then you could go up, down, left, or right. And that's all you can do. And you need to find the secret path.
Oh, gosh.
And if you go any other direction, it would just continue the exact same kind of block of land or whatever would just repeat infinitely. And I still remember to this day, you have to go in, you go left, you go in, and then first you go up, you go left, you go down, you go left, and then you come out the other side. And I had to memorize that. I can't remember who even told me what it was, but I remember before finding out that was the way to go, I would get to that point in the game and I'd spend 20 minutes trying to figure out how I'm supposed to get through this secret area, and I would never figure it out. And then I'd be like, well, I guess I can't play the rest of this game then.
Poor child. I guess I'm stuck in the woods. Help.
Yep.
Yeah, they kind of did that with the Lost Woods and Ocarina of Time, but they made it a bit easier where they added the music being played, and you'd have to sort of follow the music through the woods to find your way through. It was very
okay.
It was like a slight music, it wasn't super obvious, but once you figured out oh, I have to follow the music, then it became a lot easier. Otherwise you're literally just on a loop forever and you can never get out and you're stuck there, and then Link dies. IRL. Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly put probably my favorite, Link to the Past is absolutely fantastic. I think my favorite Zelda game would probably have to be the Minish Cap, because that was just a fantastic experience, and it's very close to Link to the Past. I think the Minish Cap sort of just sneaks ahead.
What did that come out on?
I believe that came out on the DS or something like that. Let's have a look. I don't know. I played it on the Retro console. Game Boy Advance.
Ah.
Yeah, I played it on the Virtual Console on my Wii U. But it's a very, very good game. Really cool mechanics. Great story, and it's a little bit different to all the other sort of Zelda games, and I'll love it forever. Oh my God, my throat. So that's gonna bring us to the end of the Secret of Mana. But now everyone, it's question time. Welcome to question time. So Roy, I have a big question for you. What is one or maybe a few retro games that you would love to see get remade or even remastered?
This is a hard one because a lot of the ones I think of, I read this. I read this earlier when you sent it to me, and I was like, that question. I was like, oh, I'll have to think about that, and I thought about it, and I kind of still don't really have an answer because, like, if I think about like Secret of Mana, they did remake it, and I think the original was better. Yeah, like I looked at reviews and I looked at the gameplay and what it looked like, and I thought, nah, I think I'd prefer to just keep playing the original. Thanks. And I think about that a lot of retro games, I feel that way about it. I feel like it had a special place in time and it fit into that place and it was perfect in that time at that age when I was a kid. It was perfect for that time, and I'm happy to think about it nostalgically in my memory as a good time, and kind of, that rose tinted glasses, you look back at it and in your head it's so realistic, but you kind of play it now and you're like, oh, it kind of looks like shit. And if you remaster a game now, I feel like a lot of the time, not always, unless it's exceptionally well done, a lot of the time it kind of takes away some of the magic of playing the original,
the charm.
And yeah, some of that charm kind of gets lost a lot of the time, I feel like. So I've never been super big into playing like full on old school retro games being remastered and remade. I'm fine with, like, for example, when they kind of did the remaster of Last of Us for PS4, and it's the same game, it just looks a lot nicer. It's like stuff like that. It's not retro, it's just bringing it from one generation back up to the current generation or something like that. And I think a lot of that stuff is fine, and they did an amazing job with, like, the not the Last Guardian. What's the other one?
The game that's like the
Shadow of the Colossus.
There we go. We're good at games.
Yeah, when they redid that from PS2 to PS4, but even that, I don't like, even Shadow of the Colossus, I guess you would call that retro, kind of, but PS2, it's kind of, I feel like it's still in that middle ground. It's kind of semi-retro.
It's going to be retro to a few people probably in the next few years.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of kind of the old school retro games staying retro and staying in my memories rather than getting remade and playing them again. And I also just love the idea of new IP, just playing new games that are fresh ideas. Like I want to see more fresh stuff. I don't want to see more sequels and more remakes and all that. I want to see new, fresh ideas from new, fresh developers. Like that, I absolutely love.
So what Raw is saying, he wants to see more half-naked men lubed up with no hair on their bodies.
Exactly.
Fresh ideas. It is a hard question to answer for sure, and that's I ask the hard questions. This is 60 minutes, and I think the games that would benefit from like a remake would be probably those PS1 era games. Which you'd probably just want to remake the visuals more than actual gameplay, because a lot of those games had pretty good gameplay. It's just the visuals haven't held up very well. So if you could like make some of those sort of early 3D games to beautiful 2021 games, I think that's probably where they should focus their remaking powers on. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I would like to see newer games and new ideas. There are rumors, and big rumors that have just come out in the past few weeks about Diablo 2 getting a possible remake, maybe remaster. Not too sure, because it's only really a strong rumor. And that scares the shit out of me because I'm a huge Diablo 2. Like Diablo 2 would probably have to be my favorite game of all time. Like hands down, my favorite game of all time. And I'm scared that they'll ruin it, even though I don't have to play it. I'm just scared it'll be like, oh, they made it like easier, or they did this. And because to me, Diablo 2 is perfect. Except for the visuals. I mean, upgrade the visuals, just leave the gameplay.
Yeah, like because that's funny. I played a lot of Diablo 1 because that actually ran on my crappy old PC when I was a kid, but I never got Diablo 2. I never got the chance to play it. But That's kind of funny because I was going to do this thing where, you've got your question time, and I was going to be like, well, I've got a question for you. And then I was going to ask you if you were doing, if the places were swapped and I had asked you to come on on the Geek'd Out podcast, and I asked you, what game would you want to choose to talk about from your childhood or whatever, that would be the one game that's your favorite game that you would really love to talk about. What game would it be? And you just answered it without me even asking.
I ruined your moment. If I had like a dream, if I had a dream episode, it would be Diablo 2, Earthbound, or maybe
Let's say Sea of Thieves.
A Link to the Past or Minish Cap.
Okay. I was waiting for you to say Sea of Thieves. I was like, no.
Diablo 2 would be a fantastic episode, and I'd love to do it one day. So if there's any like cool people out there that want to talk about Diablo 2, hit me up. But yeah, I am also old enough to remember Diablo 1 and remember when Diablo 2 got announced, because Diablo 1 at the time, pre-Diablo 2, was amazing and so immersive and so good and fun. I played that over and over and over and over again, and every time I ran into the butcher, I was like, oh my god, I'm so scared.
I still remember going up against the butcher for the first time. I was like, oh Jesus, this is impossible. I was like, is this the end of the game? Is this the final boss?
Fresh meat. Yeah, this end game. And like the whole Deckard Cain, I love Deckard Cain and all that kind of stuff. And then Diablo 2 came out, and oh man, if my hours got tracked back then, it would be years. I spent a lot of my childhood in Diablo 2 with, and it was a great game to play with friends. It was, using the new power of the internet that was coming out at the time, the early 2000s, so you could play with people online, and it was pretty good. But oh man, it's just, I think about it and I almost just want to cry about how good it is, and I'm really thinking about maybe streaming some Diablo very soon too, because I want to play it again.
Oh, you should
do it. But thank you for asking that question, Raw. It's very, very generous of you.
Well, since you kind of stole that question away from me, I do have one other question.
Okay.
I think everyone wants to know. It's a follow-up from last week. How's the tooth story going?
It hurts, man. It's so sore.
Give us an update.
Okay, so update on the tooth. It's constant pain. I'm in pain all the time. Right now, I'm in pain. I got a smile on my face, as you can all see. Not really. So I'm going to the dentist this Wednesday. I'll probably have to get like maybe an x-ray or something to see what's actually wrong. So I don't think anything will happen this Wednesday, but I'm absolutely crapping myself at the thought of going to the dentist, because I think, like, yeah, people have like the fears that like cripple them, like crippling fears. The dentist is that for
phobia.
Me. I hate it. I hate the thought of it. The idea of smelling a dentist literally makes me want to be sick.
I can understand that. Like I think you probably know, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm type 1 diabetic, and so I have to jab myself with needles like 3 or 4 times a day, every single day. And it took a long, long time to get used to the idea of sticking a needle in myself. It took like a year of doing it like
yourself,
3 or 4 times a day.
It would.
Yeah. Well, I felt like it was better doing it myself than letting other people do it. At least I had control over it.
Okay.
Like, it felt at least I had some amount of control to be able to do what I was doing. But it took me about a year of sticking needles in myself 4 times a day, every single day for 365 days to finally start getting over the fear of needles.
Oh, wow.
And now it's been years and years, but still to this day, I have almost no fear of needles sticking in myself unless I'm going to the dentist and they have to stick a needle in my gums.
Oh, kill me.
I still hate that. That still makes me shiver. I still can't. Oh,
I love it because I'm like, because as I said, I haven't gone to the dentist since I was in primary school, which, big bad on me, but I ain't going there voluntarily. That shit's scary. But like, everyone's like, I tell people, I'm like, oh, I gotta go to the dentist. I'm really scared. And I don't know if they're like trying to like help me, but they tell me their dentist stories, And every time I hear a dentist story, it makes me not want to go even more.
But the thing is, the worst part about going to the dentist isn't going to the dentist. It's the fear of going to the dentist.
Yeah.
The time coming up and the fear that you feel going there and then getting there and being worried about what they're going to do and all that, that's way worse than what they actually do. It's when it's all over, it's not that bad. But the fear leading up to it and the anxiety and all that, that's way worse than what actually happens physically when you're there.
Well, I'm going to Stacy's dentist because apparently her dentist is really good. And on the booking form, I wrote down 11 out of 10 scared. I'll probably cry.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure they deal with that. They deal with that. They know what to expect. They deal with it all the time.
I think it's a pretty common fear of the dentist. Oh my God.
Yeah,
So on next week's episode, you'll get an update.
Or maybe you're talking like this because you have things in your mouth.
I'll have to do
you were
like
talking like the Godfather with the big cotton buds in both sides.
I'll have to do text to speech for the whole episode.
I'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
Oh yeah, shitting myself. Hopefully it goes well. But thank you. For, maybe Raw can come hold my hand and while I'm crying uncontrollably. I hate the dentist. Screw the dentist. Screw teeth. But that's gonna bring us to the end of this dentist episode of Geek'd Out. But Sir Genesis, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
It's so weird people calling me sir or whatever. That's.
Do you remember the transition from when you just got called like something and then it's like, oh, just leave the man alone, or you get called man or Mr. or Sir. And you're like, oh, am I really that old? Anyway, Sir Genesis, thank you for hanging out with me today.
Thank you for inviting me on. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to come on anytime to talk about anything except for Sea of Thieves.
Okay, so I guess Raw Genesis is never coming back because that's the only game we'll talk about. No, we'll definitely sort something out. We'll sort out some more games to talk about. But where can everyone find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at raw_Genesis, because yes, I'm one of those fools who put an underscore in his name. What an idiot.
Is there a Raw Genesis without an underscore?
I don't know. I don't know why. I made it when I was a little kid, and it was back when underscores were cool to tell the difference between the first part of the name and the last part of the name. I don't know why, but it was just cool, and it's not anymore. Just don't do it.
Don't do it, guys.
In like the early 2000s, it was cool. It's not cool anymore. But because I made that account on all these different platforms, and then I've got all these social medias, and it just stays. Yeah. But yeah, Twitter at raw_Genesis, twitch.tv, same thing, raw_Genesis, YouTube. I barely put things there, but hey, I've got like one video that has a lot of views. So, I mean, if you want to go see that, it's raw_Genesis.
Do it. Is that the chair one?
No. I did a little unboxing and kind of semi-review first impression thing about an Alienware laptop, because for some reason Alienware decided to send me a laptop, and I still to this day don't know how they figured out who I was or how they found me, but they just emailed me one day and they were like, "Hey, we'll give you a laptop if you do this stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do that stuff. I'd love a laptop, thank you."
Cool.
And so I made a video, and I'd always wanted to make a video of like a kind of like a little semi-tech review, semi-unboxing kind of thing, but make it like real stylistic and have cool like camera movements and stuff. So, and a cool lighting. And because about me, I got into IT, but I tried to get into IT and also film production at the same time. I just happened to get accepted into IT, not film production, but I love film production stuff. So yeah, I just made this fancy video for them, threw it up, and it's got like 25,000 views. It's like, oh, that went pretty well.
So you can quit your job now.
Yeah, all my other videos have like 15 views. So
you can quit your job now.
Yeah.
Definitely check out my YouTube. I'll put the link to the actual video in the show notes if you don't want to go through one extra click, go show Raw some love. Go probably one of the most entertaining streams you'll see on Twitch these days. Like it's literally nonstop entertainment, and for a lot of people that shit's hard, but Raw makes it look so easy.
I died on stream recently.
I did see that, and Raw is the kind of guy to take things further than what they probably need to be.
Yeah, you don't know this last night's stream, because I do a lot of bits and they just kind of happen organically. Last night's stream, a fly got into my room, and by the end of the stream, I was playing like cowboy music, and I was chasing a fly around the room with a Nerf gun, and then I smashed the keyboard.
It's content. It's content, guys. I think that's one of the cool things about your stream is you'll literally turn something like literally nothing into something and do it so flawlessly. There was one clip, it was like an out of context clip, and you just like literally ran to the corner of the room. I was like, I don't know why, but I lolled.
Like I think people don't realize the amount of sometimes planning that goes into like one tiny little stupid joke. Like that whole idea of where I died on stream, I planted the idea of that like 4 months ago on stream. Like I had just out of nowhere, I had this idea, like I'm going to tell this story about when I was a little kid in the early 90s. I went and saw a fortune teller, and she told me all this stuff about my future. And then I asked her when I would die, and she said I was going to die in January 2021. And for a little kid in the early 90s, that's like a million years ago. And so I was never worried. But then I told that story in like October of 2020. So it was still months ahead. And then I'd keep like dropping hints about this story throughout the months until it hit January. And then I filmed this whole thing about me being a ghost, and I overlaid it, and I set it to one of the buttons on my stream deck. So I could like a transparent ghost version of me would show up on the stream. and it like relied on like, I have a thing on my my channel points where people can make me play Russian roulette with a Nerf gun, and it kind of relied on the fact that somebody would have to, number one, make me do the Russian roulette and use their channel points, and number two, I would just happen to actually spin the wheel, spin the thing, fire it, and the Nerf gun would actually come out. It was like a 1 in 6 chance. So God. All of these things had to just line up, hopefully in the month of January, where I would shoot myself and it would happen. And it just happened to happen. Like if it didn't happen, I would have just missed it. Nobody would have ever seen it. But this was months in the works, and it happened, and I shot myself in the head with a Nerf gun, and then Ghost Me appeared, and then I started. Ghost Me was freaking out and looking at dead me on the chair, and oh my God, it was.
And the perfect thing is, you're wearing the same shirt too.
Yeah, because it was completely by chance. Like I happened to throw the same shirt on that day, and the Ghost Me was wearing that shirt. It just worked out perfectly.
I'm going to put a link to that actual tweet in the show notes too. Definitely go check it out, because it's just so over the top, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm dead.
Like Insano didn't realize that I did that live on stream. He thought I edited it later. And then when he realized that was actually something that happened live on my stream, that there was like Ghost Me on the stream and everything, he was like, what? No way. Oh, it was great.
Bless Insano. I'll have to get him on the podcast one day too. We'll talk about.
He's a great dude.
Probably talk about Sea of Thieves, knowing he's such a big fan. Love you, Insano. Probably not listening. So that's gonna. Me. You can find me at Twitter at Wilbur Sprinkle. You can find me streaming Sea of Thieves, hopefully all year, depending on how these new updates go. Stream Sea of Thieves. I stream a few newer games that come out. I really want to start streaming Hitman 3 very soon, but I'm trying to get through Amori at the moment. So that's on my list at twitch.tv/Wilbur Sprinkle. You can find me over at youtube.com/Wilbur Sprinkle, where I do try and edit some streams down and make them look nice and funny for your entertainment. over there. So definitely go check that out. This podcast will also be on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and a YouTube version, and all the other major podcast players. And make sure you give us a lovely 5-star review because it helps us with the algorithm. Yeah, there's not much more to say. I mean, we could literally probably talk for like another 2 hours, but Roy, we'll have to get you back. We'll talk about Sea of Thieves, or if you really want to talk about another game, we can. It's all up to you, my friend. But I'll see everyone next week. Have a lovely week. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.